So many times I found myself so unorganized and I'm searching for different clips or I'm searching for different photos, and it's just a complete waste of time. It's not efficient. And the biggest thing we want to do as a filmmaker or photographer is be as efficient as possible. Okay, so just a quick glance into the future of this little series. We're gonna create several videos, and I wanna keep them short and sweet, and I wanna touch on specific topics for each video. This is something you have to practice. This is something you have to become familiar with, and I'm gonna do my absolute best to give you guys the information in a very detailed format that you can then go apply to your edits, your workflow. That's going to include everything within Premiere that is anything from the interface to masking to proxying your footage to installing LUTs, color grading, nesting timelines. I mean, you name it, we're going to go through it, and I want to give you a full synopsis. This is like a masterclass for free right on this channel. Consider subscribing because we're going to keep adding videos into this library. Today's video, we're specifically going to dive into data management, because I truly believe this is the foundation of really getting into the editing flow. My process as a filmmaker, photographer is take my memory cards out of my camera and dump them onto my hard drives. Immediately, no matter what time it is, if it's 2 a.m., just come in, dump your footage into an external hard drive folder. And we'll get into this a little bit more detail in just a bit. I do like the idea of being able to carry smaller external hard drives. There is something I have been looking into, and that's a network available storage NAS system. But at this point in my career of filmmaking, we're sticking with this process. So I have found that Amazon Day, Prime deals, I mean, you just keep your eye out for those deals because you can get great external hard drives at a very reasonable price. This is pretty typical of what my desktop looks like. I try and keep it really clean. That way I'm not confused. Anything that doesn't belong on the desktop, I throw into this miscellaneous folder. Next, what I'll do is I will go in here. This is my hard drive, my external hard drive. It's a LaCie 5 terabyte external hard drive. And while we're talking about it, so my process is to back up each project on a hard drive, and then my working files are gonna be on an SSD drive. This new one was on Amazon Prime deal. It's a 2 terabyte SSD from SanDisk. Samsung, SanDisk, they both make great SSD drives, as well as Glyph. Glyph is probably my favorite brand of hard drives, external hard drives, SSD cards. They do a really good job. They're very rugged. They're durable. I haven't had any issues in the past with corruption or failure. So look into them. They are more expensive. So if you're a little bit more on the budget side, then I would definitely recommend Samsung or SanDisk. They do a great job as well. Getting back to what we were talking about. Typically what I'll do is I'll come here, create a new folder with the date of when I shot that project. The year, the month, and then the day. I will go in and copy this file structure into my new folder in here. The way I lay this out is first I'll have my project, I'll have my footage, which is my video footage, and then my audio files. Any graphics that I'm gonna use, I'll store in here. My stills, my photos, your exports will live in here, and then everything else I just do a dump into here. Now within our audio files, we will have our music, our sound effects, and our voiceover tracks. This system just keeps you so organized. This is the first place I'm gonna go. I'm going to take my footage that I just got out of camera, and I'm gonna dump it into either card 1, card 2, card 3, or I'll add additional folders based on how many cards I've used throughout that day. I'm gonna get my clip and I'm gonna dump this into card 1. I'm gonna let it do its thing. Now, if there were more files in here, I would transfer more of the files, but today we just have one file in there, so that makes it nice and easy. This is gonna take about 6 minutes. I'm gonna go do my thing. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna come back in the morning, and all my footage is going to be on my hard drive. Once I come back, once I have all my footage off of my camera and onto my hard drive, I will take this whole project and I will copy it to my SSD drive. Now I'm ready to edit. So here is my mobile photography tools folder. So we're done with the hard drive. Now we have it housed on 2 drives. So we have a backup. The last thing you want to do, especially if you're working for a client, is lose the data and then your project shot. You've spent days filming, you've spent countless dollars trying to capture what you think is going to be this great project, and then you're the one who loses the data because of a technical malfunction or something happens with your drive. Don't let it be your fault. This is the best process that I've found that works great. I've never had an issue with it. For here, what I like about organizing it by the date is I can quickly glance at, okay, this day I shot this. This is the project I'm working on. It orders it in chronological order, which is nice because I can quickly reference back. On each one of my drives, I will have a file structure drive in case I want to quickly go in, copy the project file, and paste it into a new project. The project is where our Premiere, After Effects, Lightroom, Photoshop, all those project files are going to live in this folder. Whether you have a project in iMovie or Final Cut Pro or any editing software or any sort of software should be housed in this project file. Next, we're going to jump to our footage. So here I consolidated after dumping my cards, and I always like to know what cameras I'm shooting from. So the way I'll label these is I have my A-roll. Now the proxies are going to live right next to it. We'll get into proxies at a later video as part of this series. And then we have some screen recordings and we have our B-roll that was shot with the A7S III. Now, if I had a drone or if I had a different camera like an A7 III or a Canon or whatever the camera might be, I would create a new bin and a new folder and label it as that device. That way you know what it's coming from, who shot it, and I might put the name after that device. So if someone else has an A7S III that's coming along with me, I'll put their name behind it. That way I know whose footage was what shot that day. The next piece is the audio. So for this, I'm doing an external voiceover on this microphone into a Zoom H4n. I gotta sync it in post-production. That's gonna be housed in my voiceover file. Any sound effects I use for this project are going to be housed in here. Now, I do have a whole nother creative assets folder that has a whole sound effects library that I'll pull from. But typically what I do, and this may be a little redundant, is save the sound effects that I'm using for that project into this sound effects folder. The reason I do that, if for some reason I have this SSD drive with me, but I don't have my creative assets folder with me at any given time and I want to work on the project, I won't be able to relink those files because I don't have the actual asset with me. Any project asset I'm using should be housed on your SSD drive. And then I'll put my music in here, and any licensing PDFs will go along in here as well. Any sort of graphics I pull from the internet, any graphics I create, those will all be housed in this fourth folder. Again, stills, photos. This one was broken down. These are still frames that I took. Some thumbnails for the YouTube video, the raw files, as well as the final products of the different thumbnails that I created. And this is nice because you can quickly reference which ones you want to go through. Sorry, there's a lot of information, but this is the absolute most important piece before we get into the editing where we actually get to get creative. Okay, you spend a little bit of time here, you're going to save yourself a ton of time on the back end. Any sort of export for social media or YouTube or any platform will be housed on here, and I'll label it as such. And then everything else, typically this is pretty empty, but just in case there's something else that comes along that I want to use, I'll put it in here. Once I have kind of set this whole project up and I'm on my SSD, the project is completely finished, I have my exports, then what I will do is I will actually take this and I will copy it and replace it with my old project on my hard drive. The original only had kind of the raw structure, the raw files. I take that project, put it on my hard drive, Once it's all transferred back over to my hard drive, I know I have 2 copies. I'll double check and make sure. I'll hit get info, make sure that the size matches with the one on my hard drive. Now, in this case, it's not going to because I haven't done this yet, but essentially I'll put these 2 together and you can see the size on this file is significantly larger than the size on my SSD. So that will automatically tell me, okay, something isn't transferred over. It's a quick reference. Very important so you don't miss any files. Once I have double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked that those numbers are good, I have all my files on my hard drive that's going to be stored. I can then erase that file, that folder from my SSD, which clears memory for my new project coming in. And then we repeat and do it all over again. What I will say is that at this point, once I've deleted off my SSD, I am sitting with only 1 copy of that project. Typically for my YouTube videos, I will just keep 1 copy. I don't need a backup. And if it is a client, I will have 2 or 3 backups. Okay, so to wrap this up, this method is what works best for me. By no means is this the end all be all. I've adjusted this over the last 2 years quite a bit, but I have found something that I've used within the last year time and time again, and it works great. Appreciate you sticking around for this first video of this series. The next one's gonna get better. We're gonna jump into just part 1 of Premiere and really dive into the software, the interface. So be sure to check that video out, and I appreciate you sticking around. We'll see you in the next one.